Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. We have a great episode for you today, and this is a sort of a carryover episode from the podcast we just released today, or a podcast we have released, depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, I guess, with the InstallFree folks. So I'm really excited about this, and if you wanted to learn more about install in this video here, we're going to show it. We're going to show what the InstallFree guys are doing with application virtualization and migration, and blah blah blah. But if you want to really dive into it in a learn from a listening perspective, definitely jump over to the DABCC radio episode that we just recorded and posted today also. So and of course the links for all that will be in the show notes, but just head over to dabcc.com and you'll find it within DABCC radio and of course on the show notes for DABCC TV. So with no further ado, let's just dive directly in this. So I'm really excited to have Alon with us, who is also the gentleman that we had on the DABCC radio podcast. So Alon, thank you so much for being with us again to do this video.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Okay, so real quick, let's get the housekeeping pieces out of the way. So first and foremost, who are you and what do you do at InstallFree?
My name is Alon Yaffe, and I'm the Director of Marketing at InstallFree.
Perfect. And tell me about InstallFree. Who are you guys? What's the goal?
We are a privately held company that has a solution for application compatibility and portability. We do this using application virtualization technology, but as you will see in this demo, this is much more than just changing the way you deliver and manage applications. This is also a way for you to take applications that are normally not compatible with new operating systems like Windows 7 and then fixing those applications and making them compatible. And I'm going to show you all of that in the demo.
Perfect. Okay, so with no further ado, let's have at it.
All right. So before I get started, let me just quickly review the environment I'm going to demonstrate on and talk just a little bit about how we set up this product. So I have 3 virtual machines. I have a Windows Server 2003 that we're going to run our console on, and I have my Windows XP client and my Windows 7 client. So pretty simple demo environment here. So right now we're looking at the Windows Server machine, and like we talked about in the podcast, Doug, the nice thing with InstallFree is that all the components of the solution itself are virtual applications. So in order to get our stuff installed, all you really need to do is create a share and unzip our console into it, and you're done. So there's no permanent applications you have to install. There is no system services. There's really nothing. You just extract the files, you put a license file in there, and you are done. So what I'm going to do now is run our InstallFree management console. This is just a shortcut that we put for that executable. I'm going to log in, and I'm going to use a user that has read access to my Active Directory domain. And now the console will initialize, and I can start working.
That's pretty amazing. That's what I wanted. There's many things I love about your technology, but the fact that it's all virtual, it's all virtualized. So you're actually virtualizing your own infrastructure. There's no need for, dedicated PCs or installing a product. I mean, people can literally, if they're listening to this right now or watching this right now and they say, this looks good, cool, I want to try it out, just download it, pop it on their their Windows 7 PC that they're using in front of them or Vista or XP and try it out, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You will still need a server and Active Directory because we're using that for management, but there's no infrastructure you really need to install.
Yeah, and you're not actually expanding the schema or anything. I mean, all you're doing is just using the users and groups and in a file share, so it's non-intrusive, correct?
Right, absolutely. Right.
Perfect.
So the file share we use to store all of our configuration files and virtual applications. The directory we're using for targeting applications or for entitlement, if you will. When I start the console, you can see it right away. I have 2 trees here. One is what we call the InstallFree file share. I'll cover that later. And we have my Active Directory server here. And then I can see my domain. I have a demo domain here and all the different organizational units. And this is a real-time browse of AD. Nothing gets written to Active Directory. We're not touching it in any way. But you can see all the objects that I expect to see in AD are here. And that helps me then to manage applications. If I want to target applications per user, I can right-click on the user and manage applications. I'll show this later. If I want to manage applications per computer, I'll just right-click on the computer and manage applications. I can assign applications with an OU level, domain level, group level, whatever. It's just a very, very flexible system that allows me to send out applications pretty much to anything. This covers the Active Directory tree here. The InstallFree file share is, like I said, is where we host all the different applications that we manage and our own system components, some reporting. This is basically the way you manage the system itself. Now, I'm actually going to start from the system folder here. Like we talked in the podcast, one of the really nice things about InstallFree is the way everything is modularized. And that modularization, if there's such a word, extends to the way the product itself is built and the way we manage virtual applications. So, like we have different InstallFree engines here, or Bridge, which is our virtual client. I can have multiple versions of that. Bases, this is our mini operating system, or compatibility layer, if you will. And every virtual application that I deliver can have a combination of these things. So I can always create an environment that's compatible with what the application wants to see. And that's really, really important, because if I'm now trying to move an application to a new operating system, maybe I will need to change the engine that this application uses to run, because I need an engine that's compatible with the operating system. But I don't really have to repackage that application. So, right there we can save hours, sometimes days of work for users that are migrating between operating systems. Does that make sense, Doug? Anything else here?
No, that makes total sense to me. And then, of course, guys, if something doesn't make sense, please refer back to the audio or the audio podcast, because Alon really goes through all this stuff in detail. So.
Okay, so let's look at the actual applications we have. We have a bunch of them already packaged here for the demo, and I'm actually going to pick an application here that we saw with some of our customers in the education space called Angel Learning. This is actually a web-based application, so it needs Internet Explorer in order to run, and it requires many different dependencies that needs to be available on the local machine. So, it's one of those web-based, quote-unquote, applications that actually requires a ton of stuff to be installed on your machine. And getting something like that to be portable between different machines, and especially between operating systems, can be very, very difficult. So we can take all of these dependencies, package them separately, and then assign them to this application. So all of these dependencies that you see here are only visible when you're running Angel Learning. The other thing is that Angel Learning requires Internet Explorer 7. And that's something I can set up in my application policies. You can see the base I'm using here, or the compatibility layer that I'm using here for this application, will always use a base that's based on Internet Explorer 7. That's irrespective of the version of Internet Explorer that's already installed on this machine, or, for example, if I'm trying to run this on Windows 7, right, that has IE8 built in. But this application will always run with Internet Explorer 7. I can do the same thing, attach applications to their own private instance of IE6. And that's a great way for me to resolve compatibility issues when I'm trying to move applications to Windows 7. So again, you can see the modularity. I can take applications. I can package dependencies separately. And then once they're here under the dependencies folder, once someone starts this Angel Learning application, all of these things get immediately recomposed into the application. So there's really nothing you need to do here in terms of telling the application how to link all of these packages or anything like that. It will run, and it will merge all of these dependencies. So we have a bunch of applications here, and I think the best way to start looking at this is, I'll just pick a user here and start assigning some applications so we can see that working. So I'm going to go to my demo users and pick Joe, which is my favorite user, and I'm going to right-click on that user, manage IFV application, and I have a window here, and it's pretty easy, right? I can expand the folders of the applications, and then just, click on an application to assign it. And by default, when I click on an application, it automatically includes all the dependencies and expansions and all that stuff. So let's give this guy Angel Learning. Let's do Office. You see there's a bunch of expansions here that we package separately. Maybe we're not going to give all of them right now. I can have multiple versions of Office, right? All of these applications are isolated. Nothing ever conflicts with anything. Let's put QuickTime 2. There's a few cool use cases I want to show you. So we have an application here that will actually run with its own screen resolution, irrespective of what the machine is currently set for. I have an application here that actually creates its own virtual private drive so it can access documents on the network even if the user session itself doesn't have access to that share. Let's say a couple of legacy applications so I can show you the compatibility features. And just click OK. Now you can see all of these applications were added. So just I can look at them in the console. And what I'm going to do now is switch to the Windows XP machine. I'll direct your attention here to this guy here. This is our client. It's actually a virtual application, just like the console, just like every other component that we have. It runs completely in user mode, which means it can run on a fully locked down machine. And what it does is that it communicates with a file share, or if you're delivering applications to the web, it will communicate to a web server. It determines which applications this user or computer needs to have, and then it downloads these files into a location on the machine that's open, for example, the user profile or, a staging directory that you have on your machine, and then it integrates these applications into the shell of the operating system. So like you see, the icons are created. If I go to my start menu, all of these applications appear here. None of them are actually installed, but they're fully integrated into the shell. In fact, we also add them to the add remove programs applet so that if you're using asset management or, inventory collection applications that look for these entries for inventory purposes, they will catch those apps. But they're not physically installed. So one of the nice things I like to show, if you go to the program files directory, you will actually not see any of these applications here, right? You don't see Office or Firefox. They're all running from our own virtual file system. So let me start some applications and show you what's going on. I'll start Angel Learning. This is, like I said, it's a web-based application. It needs to run in IE7. And what happens is that it's looking for all of these plugins on the machine. So I just started this application. It's a virtual instance of Internet Explorer. Right, Internet Explorer 7. And it detected all of these components, Acrobat Reader 7 and QuickTime Player and Windows Media. All of these components are also virtual. They're not visible outside of this application. The native version of IE that I have on this machine is actually IE8. Right, so what you see here is IE8 and IE7 running side by side, and they're not conflicting. One of the other nice things that we do here is that if you're trying to access an application that you virtualize and needs its own version of IE, but you're trying to access it from the native browser, so if I try to go to Angel Learning right now, you can see that I'm actually getting a message that the session is going to be redirected into the virtual browser. So the end user experience is great, right? They don't have to think about which browser to use in order to use their applications. They just put in the URL and we'll open the application in the right browser. All right, so you can see Angel Learning. Firefox is an application where I specified a rule that it has to open with its own specific screen resolution. You know, this is a use case we saw at some customers where they had some multimedia applications that had to run, you know, at 800 by 600, and these guys were going from machine to machine, resetting screen resolution for this application. So now they can attach this rule to the virtual application. And if I open it, I hope you can see this in the video, right? But my screen resolution just changed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can.
Right, so now it's 800 by 600. And I'll close this application. Oops. So, and my screen is back to 1024 by 768. Right, and the reason we can do this is because we control the execution environment for the application. So we can do all sorts of really nifty things. Okay, so I have another example here to show you how we control the execution environment for applications. I have a virtual instance of Adobe Reader here, and let's look at my computer for a second. And you can see I have a bunch of drives here, the local drive, and I have the X and Y network drive. And let me start Adobe Reader. You can see that here I actually have access to another drive, drive M. So this is a network drive that's mapped only for this specific application session. I can open this document. This is a good way, for example, to control access for any kind of drive, not just network drives, but also CD drives or whatever you need, just for specific applications. And that drive is not really visible outside of this application. It's not going to be visible to any other application. So really, there's a lot of flexibility here that I have. All right, so what I want to show you now is how I use all of this technology and this solution to really solve application compatibility problems and help migrate your environment to Windows 7. So I'm going to switch my VM here to Windows 7. And I'm logged in here, again, with Joe user, and I have my Bridge virtual client running here. Again, it's not installed. It's a user mode application that you can download to your machine using a login script or whatever, and then just run it. And you can see that pretty much all the applications that I had on the XP machine are now here. They're fully integrated into the shell. I can run them. And if your applications were virtualized with InstallFree and now you're moving to Windows 7, then the whole application migration is really a non-issue. But it's a little bit more than just being able to deliver these applications on demand, right? Windows 7 has Internet Explorer 8 integrated. And if you remember, I had some of these applications like Angel Learning that actually needed IE7. So I opened it, and it actually opened in IE7. Right? They detected all the dependencies that it needs. And this is IE7. I have NetLabels, which is a super old Java application that needs to run in IE6. So I can run it, and it just opened in its own private instance of Internet Explorer 6 that has a Java plugin in it. So you can see it's initializing, it's loading the application. If you look at the tray here, I have Java, it's version 1.3. If you try to run this application natively on Windows 7, it would actually crash Internet Explorer 8. We have a little video on our website that shows that. So again, the nice thing about this is that once my applications are encapsulated, we create that compatibility layer for them, and they will run, right? It doesn't matter if the application itself is not supported on Windows 7. We'll make it run on Windows 7. Hopefully, I want to show you another example here. Before then, just want to make sure. I think I already added the virtual application to this user. Let me just remove it. Okay, I can click on an application and click allocation, and I'll remove this guy, the Windows Server admin pack. Let's remove it. And I'll go back to my Windows 7 machine. You can see the virtual version was removed. What I wanted to show you here is actually what happens when you try to run the Windows 7 admin pack. The Windows Server 2003 admin pack on Windows 7. So this is an application that requires XP. It actually depends on the Microsoft Management Console. There's a lot of MMC snap-ins in this application. So if this application doesn't find the right version of MMC, it will not work. And let's try to install it. But I have the MSI here on my machine. I'll run it. And immediately, right, you can see Windows 7 is warning me that this application has a compatibility issue. But, we're adventurous, so I'm going to run it. We'll just take a few seconds, very fast. Of course, I'm on a lockdown machine, so I have to log in here. So for those of you who are not familiar with this application, what it allows you to do is like a remote administration of Active Directory or any Windows server. So pretty important application. So I just installed it on Windows 7, which it does not support. And let's run it. Under Administrative Tool, you can see all the different snap-ins. And let's run Active Directory Management. Right, so you can see that the MMC could not create the snap-in. Right, this application is just not compatible with a version of MMC that's available on Windows 7. Right, you click Help About, and you can see this is MMC 3 running on Windows 7 Professional. That's why the application is not compatible. But with InstallFree, I can fix this. And the way I can fix this with InstallFree, let me go back to my server, is when we encapsulate this application, we encapsulate in our compatibility environment, and we included here actually a virtualized copy of MMC version 2, which is the version of MMC that this application supports. So now if I take this application and I allocate it to this user, to Joe, then you will see that it will start working. Let our client refresh here so that the application will get delivered. So, all right, so it was delivered. And the shortcut for this application were now integrated into the shell. So when I run Active Directory Management, it opens, and I can actually browse my domain. The reason that's working is because we're now actually using a legacy version of MMC on Windows 7. Right, so I was able to do this and create this compatibility environment for this application without creating a full VM, right? Without running the application on the server and then presenting it. The application runs locally, right? And we just make sure that it runs in a compatibility environment that makes it possible for it to run.
Makes sense.
Now, of course, because we're managing it, then this is not, just a one-off. If for some reason I needed to update this application, then, I can just go here and upload an update, and boom, that update gets delivered to my machine. So it's not just a way for you to solve a specific compatibility problem right now. But while you're doing that, you're also creating a way to manage and update these applications over time.
That's very cool, Alon. That's very, very cool. What else would you like to show us? Anything?
I think one other thing I want to show you is really how it's just going back to the modularity features that I talked about before. Right? I have. Let's close some of these folders so it's easier to understand what's going on. But I took Office, right? Office 2007, and I allocated it to Joe. And let's go to this machine here and let's run Excel. Okay, so Excel is running. It looks just like a normal application. But what we've seen with customers, right, is that they may want to deploy this core application with one configuration into one set of users, and then deliver some additional add-ins like Excel toolbars to other users. And they don't want to create different versions of the Microsoft Office package. They want to use one package and then deliver it with different add-ins and different configurations to different users. So this is something we do very, very easily. I can go back to my console now, and I have a bunch of expansions that are already available in the console under Office, which are, like Excel toolbars or save as PDF. And I can click any of these add-ins and allocate it. So, let's give this add-in to Joe. So what happens now is that this little slice or layer, if you will, that represents this add-in gets streamed down to the machine. And when I launch Excel, it will be integrated into that application. And again, there's no configuration files I need to modify. There's no, I don't need to specifically link these applications together. All I do is I allocate this add-in. And let me actually show you how it looks from the system's point of view, right? I'll right-click on the bridge, the client here, and I'll go to the virtual applications window that tells me all the different virtual applications that are currently integrated. And if I click on Office, you can see that, right, you can see all these different AOD files. These are, these layers, these different things that we then integrate into the application. So Excel, right, Excel Explorer is now integrated. I have like add-ins here that allow me to contact SharePoint servers, which is something which is pretty difficult to do with some other virtualization technology. And now when I run this application, let's run Excel again. You see it can load, and it actually loaded that add-in, right? I was using a trial version and it expired, but it loaded. So again, I didn't have to touch the package. There was really nothing I needed to do. I just picked the add-in, I assigned it to the user, and the whole thing got integrated on the user's machine.
Yeah, that's neat. That is cool.
So, Doug, I mean, it's a very sophisticated system. We can probably spend an hour just going through the different use cases. But what I wanted to get across really is, right, we can modularize applications. We create compatibility environments for applications. So I can take stuff that would normally not work on Windows 7 and make it work on Windows 7. This is something we talked about at length during the podcast. I think this is really the main use case we're seeing now. Customers today that are looking at InstallFree are looking at it to solve application compatibility problems when they're migrating to Windows 7. Obviously, while they're doing that, they're creating a very strong foundation for managing these applications over time. But the immediate need for many of these customers is actually to resolve compatibility issues.
That's cool. I agree with you there too. So, if somebody wanted to learn more, what do they need to do?
The easiest way would be just to go to our website, www.installfree.com, and click on demos in our menu. and you will see a ton of different demos and different use cases, not just around application compatibility, but around how we do better application management and all of that stuff. And then obviously, if someone wants to try this software for himself or herself, you can contact us through the website and get registered for a trial.
Well, very good, very good. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and just call this an episode and let people get back to work. And does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Well, perfect. Thank you again for your time today, Alon.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, of course, thanks to everybody out there listening. We greatly appreciate the views, and definitely check out the podcast we recorded with InstallFree. Just head over to dabcc.com/radio, and you'll find it within the list. If you watch this day one, it's on the top of the list. In the future, of course, it'll be moving down, but just go ahead and search for InstallFree. Pretty simple. And